It's the week 3 edition of the Coach's Corner here on Rivalry Family Media, and great to have you along with us. Todd Robbins, as always, joined by Leominster High School head coach Devin Gates as we preview upcoming action as in week 3, Leominster finds themselves on the road once again as they travel over to the turf to play the Wolves of Nashoba Regional, the new look Wolves, formerly Chieftains, that we will see in action coming up on Friday night. New uniforms, new look, new logo, all that will come in the broadcast on Friday. But for the moment, we preview action to come. Coach, let's talk first, though, about week 2 action. It's Leominster and Doherty. It was an excellent football game. It was up and down the field. Both offenses had their moments where they controlled things. Your defense certainly had a fantastic showing in the football game, and everything winds down to the last few seconds of that football game in storyline. And then there'll always be this controversial conversation about, was there or wasn't there one remaining second? This is our opportunity to kind of put at least, and I know you hate talking about officiating, so we'll keep it as short as possible. This is your opportunity to clarify with me the things that we had heard, because you and I have compared notes. We heard some conflicting things. We were told upstairs that the clock was unofficial. You have told me since that you were told on the field that the game clock was official. So we may walk away from this conversation still not knowing whether it was or wasn't official, whether there was or wasn't 1 second left. But at the end of the day, there was 1 second allowed to remain. There was a field goal kick, not once, but twice, by Max Haynes. And the point I made on the Scholastic Sports Zone this past Sunday on the K-Zone, I think is the important point that we walk away with, is that Max Haynes, the student athlete, despite what happened with the adults, made the kick and completed the performance and executed when he needed to. That's the winning story of the football game. Yeah,
the kid's ice cold. And, I heard Coach Mulcahy too on the K-Zone. And, like he said, if he was in our shoes, he'd probably feel the same way. And, if I was in his shoes, I'd probably, be upset if they didn't put 1 second back on the clock. Going back and looking at it, the biggest thing to me was that both sides of the officiating crew weren't in agreement. We were told on our side the clock was official, and as we went down and that happened, and when I took the timeout to ice the kicker, after they had granted the timeout to Doherty, one of the officials came over and said, "Coach, I was going to wind it. I'm like, well, they had a timeout, so I'm not sure why you'd be winding it, because it goes in the snap." So there was a lot of miscommunication and a lot of question marks there that I wanted to get answers to, because I didn't feel like, in that situation when everything is that chaotic there, I feel like that was a big decision for that moment at the end of the game after both teams fought. Credit to Doherty. They didn't make the decisions. The ref made the decision. They played the decisions, like Coach Mulcahy said too, and they did a good job and they executed. I just wish that when it came down that close, and what it takes to get a timeout from the field to the sideline to stop the clock, I felt like our kids deserve better from the crew. I think they really did. To be frankly honest. Mm-hmm. It stinks because we've had this, and again, I told you before, I don't like the fact that refs become part of the narrative. I want the kids to go out there, the kids to have the credit, the kids to go and work, and to be about the kids. So when I start hearing, when calls are made that don't make sense to me, or I don't think are consistent with, what we're seeing week to week from officials, the kids suffer for that. And they've had some heartbreaking losses that way, or some heartbreaking decisions that way. And I just want to see them be able to play and not have to worry about that. But it's, some, you can see it sometimes creep up in the back of their mind when something happens, and I don't want our guys to have to play like that. I don't want them to have to worry about that. I want them to go out there, have fun and play the right way, play respectfully. We're not a dirty team. We don't do, stuff after the whistle. And we go out there respectfully, play. We have a good sideline. I just want officials to recognize that and call the game the way it's supposed to be called.
It'll go down as a 16-13 loss. Let's highlight some of the good things. But before we walk away from this topic, the question that I have been asked and often, have an answer for, but don't in this circumstance is how do you prevent it from happening in the future? And I think aside from, of course, making sure that everyone was clear on whether it was or wasn't an official clock, ensuring obviously that you can end this officiating shortage and have a clock operator that does understand the rules, that the clock isn't just there seen, but actually does have a function with an official, like you'll see at Doyle Field, Crocker Field, Bernardi and Bowl. All of those sites have officials that are tasked to that job. Most of them are former on-field officials that have been trained now to operate the clock and to run things on behalf of the officials down on the field. To me, I don't know that the answer presents itself. If there is a clock issue, I get asked, should the officials in some way communicate with the person who's operating the clock and see if they could come to an agreement? I suppose if the clock's not official, I can't trust the operator there. If it's a third party, somebody who's neutral and part of the officiating crew, I would be okay with them conversing. And then, of course, you have the replay option, which is only available in a limited number of states that can actually do it, which would also entail having the clock as part of that replay system. I mean, is there a solution here?
Todd, I don't know. I mean, especially now too with the ref shortage that we're facing too. Usually we have 6 officials for a game. We have 4. So, I think this is going to be an issue moving forward in terms of whether you're going to have a paid, official clock, timekeeper in the booth. That might have to be put on the back burner if you're trying to get guys on the field first. To have a full crew on the field or have 2/3 of a crew on the field. So that may be a problem moving forward. But there's got to be some checks and balances and some quality control there. It can't be one guy making the decision there on the sideline too. There's got to be a conference, and I just felt like that was in the hands of one guy who said, that the clock had stopped and there's 1 second back on the clock. When I thought, usually the way it happens is the other official on the other side of the field, on the opponent's side, is the one who usually keeps the clock. So it's not, so it's, you kind of avoid those things too. And so there was a lot of confusion there, and it seemed like it was one person just saying, "Oh, no, there was 1 second left on the clock," and it didn't feel great. It didn't feel great. If there was a conference there, if there was an official clock, which I was told, but now I'm hearing that there wasn't any official, official clock keeper in the booth. Again, and I've already talked about it way longer than that we want to talk about it, and I hate that we have to do it. But there's got to be some quality control, some checks and balances, and I don't have the answer. I don't know what that looks like. I don't know how you solve that without slowing the game down, or now you're getting into the nitpicky stuff. It's tough. I'd rather just try to call it the cleanest way that we can. Give the kids a chance. If it's a close game down there too, and it's happened, then it goes to overtime. Let the kids play it out in overtime. It just seemed like a really big moment to make that decision, to have one person make that decision. And I just want it to be fair for the kids. That's all I want.
And whatever that ultimately is going to take. And I'm sure as the years go by, technology will make this easier and easier. Basketball, of course, has had a precision time system for years that can operate on a microphone, hearing the pitch of a whistle. They haven't translated that entirely to the outdoor game yet, but I could see that coming at a place when, of course, technology becomes cheap enough that can be implemented. High schools don't tend to use precision time yet, even for basketball. So that is somewhere, hopefully not far off in the future, where that can hopefully make timing and things like that a much more precise application. We use some technology to our advantage, but it's going to involve some inventions, some timing, and of course, some cost control in the process as well. Let's talk about the positive things, if we can, in a 16-13 loss in this game. And you and I were highlighting some of them before we came on the air. One of the key points I think cannot be underscored enough is the performance of the defense in this football game. When you generate 6 opportunities that I suppose you could argue, weren't supposed to have, you create turnovers that give your offense additional opportunities on the field. That is the name of the defensive game, and the credit's got to be placed there for giving themselves the opportunity as a football team defensively to say, okay, we got the ball back. Offense, let's go do something.
Yeah, we put an emphasis after our Catholic Memorial scrimmage on being better tacklers, being better hawks of the ball, trying to get after the ball a little bit. And Coach Murphy does a great job, schematically. And then, himself and the assistant coaches have done a great job, mixing and matching and finding the guys that fit in what we want to do, and then coaching them up so they feel confident and they're playing more aggressive, and they're playing with a lot more confidence than I've seen them play in a long time. So, kudos to the assistant coaches there, Coach Murphy, for dialing the stuff up, and then the kids for just going out there and executing. Because I saw, motors out of some of these kids that, we've been looking for and trying to get for a while here. And then, something felt like it clicked. Like, I feel like we turned a page definitely defensively in terms of, the style, the tempo, and the intensity in which we want to play the game. And we finally started to see that, I think, in the game on Friday.
No question about that. On the offensive side of things, it wasn't for a lack of growth in that area either. Obviously, we found out on the telecast that night as we were moving forward of, the absence of Caden Constant as well as Mekhi Newton coming in. So that involved moving some pieces around, splitting time at quarterback, one more in Jake Tossie, the conventional drop back passer, the other in Brian Aguilar, a little more of the mobile option speed type quarterback. And it seemed like if you were to take, and I'd said previously, if you were to take some components of each of these three quarterbacks and put them all together, you would have a tremendous football athlete. Now it's a matter of seeing if individually they can grow to bring all of those pieces together, the running, the passing, and also the leadership and the ability to command the field.
For sure. Jake and Brian stepped in a tough position. Jake has played quarterback for a while. He knows the offense, but his game reps, in varsity action have been limited. And when he has gotten in there, it's been, in some not quarterback friendly situations, so for Jake to go in there and play calm to start there and move the ball and do some good things, I was very happy for him. Brian came in there too. Brian's played a little bit of quarterback JV, his freshman and sophomore year, but came in primarily as a receiver this season. But we've used him at QB a little bit too, just knowing that he has that skill set and to have him there and just to see, who the guy next year might be, as Jake and Caden are both seniors. So Brian stepped in, and Brian is also very cool, calm, and collected. He doesn't let anything rattle him too far. I think you can see that in the game, or too much, I should say. And, he did a good job executing the stuff that we asked him to do. We were limited in what, our playbook is. We didn't want to overload or have them confused at all. We just used a lot of base stuff, and they executed it pretty well. We got to get better at the key situations and knowing, having some functional awareness in some of those key situations that we had out there. But, again, for, running a new style of offense, I felt like our execution was better than the week before. I think kids are understanding how we want to attack teams better. And, I expect a lot of growth in the next coming weeks too.
Let's help the audience understand that offense a little bit, because when I looked at the field, it reminded me a little bit of a Service Academy-esque style offense, whether you talk about Army or Navy teams that tend to run these triple option type offenses. Give me just a little bit, obviously without giving us the key perspectives, give me a little bit of football 101 on the triple option. Obviously it's a couple different passing options, a couple different running options and a passing option that exists within the same play.
Sure. Well, it's really a pretty flexible offense, that at least the way I feel about it. And, the thing about Leominster is we're always going to have some of those gritty athletes who, can run with the football, right? Who can do some special things, who have some speed and can do that. And it's tough. Like when you run a spread offense, if you don't have a quarterback who can make the quick decision, get the ball out quick and kind of know how to look at space, it's tough to have that. It takes, those guys don't grow on trees. So it's tough to find. So it making a move to kind of the stuff that we're doing now, I think we'll always have somebody on the roster that's going to be able to execute, maybe all of it, maybe more of an option part of it, maybe more of a passing part of it, but there's always going to be, someone who's going to fit into some aspect of what we want to do out of it. And I feel like if that's, can cater to a lot of our strengths, it's designed to get different guys the ball, and that's what we want to do. We want to be multiple in who we can give the ball to, how we can attack defenses, and I feel like it's just a good fit for our athletes at the moment.
Question about it. And I feel like that is the undervalued part. And I mention it at least once a season, and usually we'll ask the coach about it. And that is, the idea of high school athletics is far different than any of the other levels that you might look at as you move ahead in your career, in the sense that, when you are a professional football team, if you don't like the chemistry or the makeup of your team, that's what free agency is all about. That's how trades work. And that's when you can just outright cut players and you can go sign new ones. That's the professional game. You can buy pieces that come together. When you look at the collegiate game, if you don't quite have the right players for what you're trying to do in your system, you just recruit a different set of players. Now you have to successfully recruit them and get them to commit, but still you have the option to recruit players that fit a certain system. High school athletics, you could take all of those concepts and throw them in the incinerator, because that is not the game at the high school level. The high school level is all about basically the best, I can give is a blackjack or a poker reference. You play the cards that you're dealt. These are the cards that came to you. You've got to make the best hand you possibly can with what you've been handed.
Sure. And that's where, I do like what we're doing now offensively, as, when we don't have that drop back guy, we can shift to a separate part of that offense, but it's still at the core, it's still gonna be the same for everybody. So it's not like we're making wholesale changes each year, to fit the style of guys that we have. Like our playbook's going to be consistent. The way we're going to call things, the way our communication, how we're going to, all of our terminology will be consistent. We could just adapt to, more towards certain plays than others, depending on, what we have for personnel. But it's from year to year, the guts of what we're doing should stay the same. So I'm not, someone who likes, a lot of change every year with this stuff. And in offense, and I understand over the last, 14, 15 games, however many we've had before the season started here, it's kind of been a feeling out process of what we've had offensively, really try to make the decisions to best fit our athletes. It's always my first goal when, designing an offense or putting in, deciding what to run for an offense. But, with moving to this, I feel like it's just a better fit for the guys that not only we have right now, but the types of kids that you see coming through Leominster Athletics. Like I really feel it could be a style of offense that, we can embrace from the high school level, the youth level, and moving on down too. So I feel like it's, something that could be really a part of, our football fabric.
And that is, of course, the goal. You see this in a lot of communities, that vertical integration. If you can start them off running it very, very young, by the time they rise up the ranks, they become even better at running those same styles, plays, and formations. 16-13, Leominster lost to Doherty in week 2 action. Leominster falls to 0-2 on the early season, and now moves on to look ahead to play a Nashoba Wolves team who come in with a 1-1 overall record. We'll preview that coming up in a moment. Coach, before we get there, let's just talk a little bit more broadly here and what we've seen over the last couple of weeks. I mean, you look up and down the charts, and we had said last week you had a lot of people that were in 2 categories. Either you had a lot of people in first place or a lot of people in second place. Some people were undefeated and some people had lost the game. And I feel like after last week's action, you have a much more muddled picture, a lot of splits with people who have found themselves into about a 1-1 record, at this early stage of the season. Whether you are 2-0 in that huge pack at 1-1 or 0-2, you are only 2 weeks into this football season with 6 more regular season weeks in front of you to work to jockey your position. A lot of teams are in very similar circumstances.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting real quick here, with the 8-game season and you're seeding the playoffs after that. They're going to see a lot of teams, really start to pick it up, I think. And, it's, a lot of teams going to get real better real fast. Maybe taking some chances where they wouldn't take chances this early in the season. But there does seem to be a lot of parity. I mean, you had, Shepherd Hill, scoring 53 points, I think it was, against Westboro, and then coming back and losing one to Marlboro. So, there's definitely some interesting dynamics going on in Central Mass football right now, and it'll be interesting to see how the next couple weeks develop. But as we saw from Nashoba, I look at Nashoba's first game against Grafton, and they didn't look so hot, and Grafton took it to them. And I look at this game against Algonquin, and they look like a strong football team that's got their stuff together, and they're playing determined, they're playing confident, they're playing for each other. So, we got to prepare for that Nashoba, not the Nashoba that we saw against Grafton. So. That's what we're going to do. And I feel like there's a lot of teams that kind of had that. Like, and it's to be expected, after coming off a weird spring that nobody maybe felt quite comfortable with, and having the short off season, I think you're going to see teams that maybe looked a little sloppy to start here really start to tighten up pretty quickly.
And that'll be the kind of the name of the game, is how does this growth happen? And it's interesting you point out those 1 week turnarounds that you can see from team to team. That was what was jumping off at me. Week ones looked ugly in some circumstances or fantastic in others. And I feel like did nothing to indicate the direction that this season is going to go as far as the growth of potential of teams. Week two certainly brought some people back to earth and launched a few other teams into conversations as well. And I think when you look ahead to where you're heading, I think you make a great point. A Nashoba week one loss to Grafton, a 41-21, kind of jumped off the page when it happened. And then a week two win versus Algonquin by a 28-14 score, where they looked far better in command of their team. Before we speak to them specifically, let's just talk about the growth potential, obviously, that your football team has the chance of, along with a lot of others across this landscape. How do you get that kind of growth that all of a sudden 1 week you go, what are we doing, to the next week, you see this huge step, and then hopefully that builds to another and another and another. What do you kind of move toward? What are you looking for in that turnaround?
Well, I think just being able to execute with some proficiency, at least offensively for us, it's been, kind of hectic at times, our execution, and maybe not quite sure of who we're stepping to or who we're throwing to. And it's been tough to kind of pinpoint that disconnect, as we don't see it in practice a lot too. We go in there in the game sometimes, and it feels a little frantic sometimes. But I think with what we're doing now, and frankly, I think I had too much in the playbook last year, the last year and the last 2019, coming off of college, thinking that we could get more in than we really have time to go over and, in practice effectively, so limiting what we're teaching, or, at least up front, and being able to really teach to the scheme and the fundamentals of things rather than alignment and assignment has been really good for our guys. So that better execution, that proficiency in execution got better from week one to week two. I think the kids felt it. I think that they feel like we've turned a corner here. At least that's what the vibe is around the team right now, and the guys are excited to go. But I look forward to more of that, both offensively and defensively, moving forward this week too.
Your comment about never having enough time to do everything in practice sparked a reminder for me. Although we talked about the major special teams play in your game last week, which was the field goal kicked by Max Haynes, special teams by and large may have been the storyline that cut as a thread across the entire game. And it is, I won't say the forgotten, but it is the oft ignored, because of so much attention and time that has to be paid to offense and defense. Getting a chance to have time to put together a special teams unit and really giving them time and practice to come together certainly never gets probably the time it needs. And yet, as you looked out on the field, it was probably the crucial part of last week's football game for both your team and Doherty. When you look at the fact that a number of times kicks went downfield, coverage looked good, players muffed balls, weren't able to, initially get them, and then all of a sudden they pick them up and run them back 40 yards. You're sitting there going, how does the completely busted play turn into something? Special teams is that undervalued component of the game.
Yeah, pulled my hair out. And Coach Papa's a special teams coordinator. He does a good job. We got to coach our kids up better. We have to. I think we work for. We work when we practice our punt. And the ball's down and bounce a couple of times. It's done. And this is on the coaches. Myself first. Making sure that we either get on the ball or make sure that someone else is away from it. So when Colin Wannett picked that ball up and ran for the touchdown, it's something that it's a situation that we didn't put the kids in, and then that's on us too. They have to go out there and execute. We talk about going max, every special teams play, every play we're out there is a max effort play, but special teams has to be, a max effort situation for our football team, with our guys getting downfield and covering, making sure that you're not letting up before the whistle blows. So that's definitely something that's going to be addressed this week in practice. And I did see some good things too. We blocked a PAT. I saw Riley Costa learn from, the week before and running down a Doherty player as he, thought he had a touchdown returning a punt, and Riley ran him down with a great hustle play. Another kid that's really, shown in the last couple of weeks here and showing some pretty gutsy play. Riley did a good job of doing that. We ended up, forcing a fumble there, so he didn't score. So that was a big play by Riley to run that down. But yeah, special teams were a big storyline in that game. There's some positives and some negatives, both sides of the ball, and both teams.
The storyline continued on into Saturday. We said, this year we would pull in stories from a national perspective, and you cannot ignore that punt in the Memphis game that appeared to have been, in theory, downed, and then was picked up and run in for a touchdown 99 yards later. I have to imagine coaches across the country, college, high school, and otherwise, are saying, when you down the ball, down the football, leave no doubt.
It was probably the first thing that we did today at practice after stretch was to get on special teams and make sure that we solved those problems that we had in the game, and put the kids in a spot to succeed. That was what we're addressing right off the bat. We walked through it yesterday, and then we went through and practiced it today full speed. So hopefully we're looking for better execution in that situation next time.
Coming up Friday night, Blue Devils and Wolves from the turf at Nashoba Regional in Bolton. Coach, let's turn our attention to this matchup between Nashoba and Leominster and start first with the coaching matchup here. I think we can't let it pass as we continue to find ways and places and connections that, everybody kind of has. And these chess matches are always fun among the coaching staffs. Yourself here at Leominster and Andy LeBlanc, coach at Nashoba, recently, of course, within the last year, taking over for Jamie Tucker and taking over for the Tucker family, first person not named Tucker to occupy that head coaching role in a very long time at Nashoba Regional, finds himself, along with you, a part of a very similar football tree. You both played for Ray Cosenza in Fitchburg. You both went on and played at Worcester State. You both seemingly then played at Fitchburg State, and the world continues to turn together. The two of you know each other very, very well, it's fair to say.
It's very fair to say. We've played a lot of football together. Andy's a great person. He's a quality coach, a quality human being. He's going to have those guys ready. Andy's a tough kid. He's a tough guy. And, I mean that in the best sense of the word, where he's going to have those guys prepared. He's going to put them in, adverse situations so they know how to handle themselves. They're going to be disciplined. But yeah, that's just the type of guy Andy is. And that's how he, that's what he exudes. And that's, the team's going to take that on.
I got to go back and think, though, there was a time back years ago when you were playing together, whether it was high school or college, you may have thought maybe both of you would be interested in going into coaching, as we've seen in so many other matchups. But the thought that you would eventually find each other again in a matchup on the football field was kind of one of those things. I'm sure you were like, yeah, maybe we'll coach against each other someday, ... Who knew?
Yeah, we just kind of went through and we both knew we got into coaching and, kept in contact here and there over the last, decade or so. And, we talk about kids he had at Nashoba as the defensive coordinator. He's been there for a while before he got the head coaching job. And, we talk about some kids that he had there that either wanted to go to Worcester or Fitchburg when I was coaching there. And, our fathers are friends and they talk and, so we've seen each other over the years and bumped into each other. And it's always nice when we do. He's I remember when we were at Fitchburg State, Andy was a running back and they had moved him to defensive end. And actually the defensive coordinator on that team is now my defensive line coach, Dennis Manoni. So he knows Andy very well too. And, Andy went in there his first game at defensive end against Maine Maritime. And I think he had like 5 sacks in that game. He just came off the edge like an animal, but he was undersized, coming from a running back spot, undersized, but he had the speed to beat those tackles. And it just speaks to his toughness and his willingness to win. And, that's just the type of guy he is. He's going to find a way. He's going to find the right players to put him in the right spots and he's going to coach them up. He's got a great staff there too.
Love the small world that is high school football, college football, and football right here in New England. Always a fantastic story. Let's take it to the field in a little more detail. The guys that you guys will be, working and preparing for your game. Somebody that we need to talk about, of course, is Nico Martinez on your team. The all-everything player, seemingly, it seemed like on the field. We have talked a lot about him, especially last week against Doherty, whether it was offense or defensive. He seemed to find his way to the right spot to either wreak havoc in one way or cause an offensive explosion in the other.
Yeah, Nico was an absolute warrior in that game. I'm not sure if he really came off the field, maybe for a couple special teams plays, but he also did the punting too. So excuse me. Nico was all over the field, all over the field. We started the game off giving the ball to him when we got the ball, and nothing fancy there. Nico's just going to come downhill and run as fast as he can, but he really showed out on the defensive side of the ball. Played with aggression, played with energy. The guys followed him, played with heart. You could see that. And it was a breakout game for Nico. It's well deserved. The kid, he puts in a lot of time, and he's been starting since he was a sophomore linebacker. So it's nice to see him, have that game. I know he would trade it in, for a win, obviously, but he really took a step forward as a leader of this football team, during that game, and the guys are going to look to him to provide that spark too. And then, in special teams too, making a couple of great plays with the punt too. Caught a punt where the snap was off a little bit and got the ball off, where that really could have been another pretty hairy situation there. So did he play offense and defense? Not coming off the field. He also was out there for the punting duty in the game where the punts were pretty important.
A one-handed snare to keep that thing alive and be able to get it down the field as well. As you look across the field, you had alluded to it a little while ago, from an offensive standpoint, you were going to be working against a team that, of course, kind of has a common thread through the years, and that is this ability to both run the football really well and then pass when they need to find the open, opportunities to create more space. When you look at this Nashoba team on video, they have got some battering ram running backs that are going to want to pound the ball inside. And then once they get into open space, it's not like they're lumbering down the field. They have the speed to break away from the pack.
No, it all starts with Connor Salmon. He's a tough kid. He runs with his shoulders downhill, squared downhill. He's got, the ability to get a good burst of speed there when he needs to. But yeah, he's going to have his shoulders squared down the line. He's going to try to run you over, and they're going to try to, wash us down and kick us out on the ends, and really try to find some space to run for him. And our guys have to be up to that challenge and be able to, create some penetration and be able to meet him in the hole and for lack of a better term, create a different line of scrimmage. It's a huge challenge for us as they played really well last week. I'm sure they're looking to capitalize on that and, to grow from what they did offensively. And, we could be ready for that, and we could be ready for some of the play action that will accompany that. That's what our guys got to do. They got to be disciplined. We know that Nashoba is going to be an incredibly disciplined team, and we have to be able to account for that as well.
When you have a head coach in Andy LeBlanc, who is a defensive-minded coach, that side of the football is going to be coached up incredibly well and is going to show some interesting and creative things that I'm sure at this point in time, you can only hope that you found somewhere, on video. As you look offensively and work your scheme, here's a dream matchup again. We'll put another, note in, an offensive-minded coach against a defensive-minded coach, as you guys kind of play the chess match against one another and try to, spot things defensively. What is your expectation of what you're going to find in front of you that you're going to have to work and scheme against?
Well, I think we got to find some running room up the middle of the field, and in their scheme, that presents problems for us. They run a 4-4, so it's really tough to kind of find some room in the middle. There's a lot of guys in the box, so we're going to have to account for that and see what they do to stop us from getting to the perimeter, and just kind of feel that out a little bit and see what we can do up front. It starts with our guys up front. For the coaching cliche, but it really our guys have to create some room. We have to be able to move them a little bit and displace, some of their defensive linemen to see if we can get some gaps in, and then we got to try to get ahead on a linebacker. Their linebackers are very active. They're very aggressive, and they fill pretty hard. So it's going to be tough sledding in there, and, we're just going to have to be athletes to go out there and make some plays.
You mentioned this 4-4 defense, and your team, by the way, defensively did a little of this as well. It felt like in last week's game, but when you looked at that video against Grafton, it felt a little like their defense was kind of milling around, and you weren't 100% sure necessarily until maybe right before the offense got to the line who was going to go where. And then even still, you had linebackers stepping up into holes and dropping back. It certainly seemed like, although Grafton was able to move the football and successfully score points, there were definitely some things about that Nashoba defense and wrinkles that you have to feel like are out there that are going to be cause for confusion on the line in front of them, whether it be offensive or defensive.
Yeah, they do a good job kind of disguising things too. It's the 4-4, it's a 3-5-3. So they'll give us a couple of those different looks where it's either 4 guys on the line or 5 guys on the line, with then, whatever combination of backers in the middle. So at the end of the day, we got to play gap sound football. We can't be chasing guys around, or we have to have our identification set for our front. And if we can't, then we got to make sure that we're washing stuff down and accounting for guys on the edge, and just play aggressive when we're, if we're not 100% sure, step to your gap, do your job, play your assignment, and someone's going to show up there. Our guys just have to trust that.
Gap sound football. That's going to be in the pregame notes as well, Coach. We'll be looking for that coming up on Friday night. The 1-1 Wolves, the 0-2 Blue Devils. The battle is on the turf at Nashoba Regional on Friday night. We'll have all the action for you on the K-Zone, AM 1280, 105.3 FM, WPKZstream.com for the radio broadcast. Leominster TV will be along as well. K-Zone coverage begins with our countdown to kickoff 1 hour ahead of kickoff at 6 o'clock on Friday night. The coverage on Leominster TV will begin at about 10 till the top of the hour at 7. So you're looking at about 6:50 for Leominster TV coverage to begin at that point in time to bring you the live video streaming along with our play-by-play. We're certainly looking forward to that, not just here in the Leominster community, but in the broader community here in North Central Massachusetts. Should be a fun game on Friday night. Coach, as always, thank you so very much. Look forward to seeing you again next week right here on the Coach's Corner. Remember, no week begins until you hear the preview right here on Coach's Corner on RFM. For Leominster High School head coach Devin Gates, I am Todd Robbins saying thank you so very much for joining us. And until next week, so long, everybody.